Good morning, LinkedIn. Welcome to Let's Build Daily. I'm your host, Chris Carolan. Happy HubSpot Hump Day Wednesday. It's been a good week so far. Good enough for me to get back to doing some fun data modeling. And something that's been on my mind for a while. And I've been talking to a colleague last month, and we're going to be meeting on Friday to kind of continue to flesh this out. This Commerce Hubified data model map, if you will, maybe some elements of ERD in it. Just trying to get our head right about what the Commerce Hub means and all those objects. And we keep hearing about everything moving towards objects. If you haven't started mapping that out yet, it's gonna take its toll on your administration of the system, I think, and you're gonna miss out on a lot of the value that you could be getting out of your HubSpot. So let's start with, we're in a free portal. We're looking at a free portal right now, so never stop teaching. And so no changes have been made, no custom objects. I don't think we have association labels in here either. And we have CRM objects here, companies, contacts, tickets. Something I just noticed today that has apparently been in place since earlier in the year is that you can see a preview as you click on. So before you click on something, there's nothing really about associations. Once you do click, you can see a little association label. And we've got a little lock here as well because we're on the free. And I'll show in a second that there's a little preview there that shows association labels too. But on the sales object side, and don't fully agree with this separation of CRM objects and sales objects, but understand they need to make a place for leads, when they came out last year. So I don't think that was a terrible way to highlight it, but hoping we can move on from this kind of, where like assigning objects to specific functions, in the organization, as we move towards smart CRM layer and, engagement layer on top. So we've got sales objects here currently with deals, line items, and quotes. So again, we're in a free portal, so we don't see leads here. That is a part of professional. And then down here we have activities. So our calls, emails, LinkedIn messages, meetings, notes, postal mail, if you're doing that kind of thing, SMS, tasks, and WhatsApp messages. Let's jump over to a very not free portal where we've done some stuff. It's conveying your message portal. And you can see we've got one additional sales object here in leads. And then we've got some custom objects set up in our customer orders and deliverables. We've got the event happily custom object suite in here. But as we've highlighted contacts, we can see association labels as it relates to each object that is associated. So if we switch over to deliverables, we've got a customer order associations that look a little bit different. So that's another layer to all this. I don't know if we'll get into it today. And I think we'll spend enough time on Commerce Hub that, maybe we don't get to the custom objects until part 2 tomorrow. But that's the gist. But we have some other objects too, in this world of, everything's an object that we're moving into. Uh, and I'll just, you know, uh, I'll touch on that in a second. But what we're looking to do is find a path towards some better documentation, uh, related to, all the things, um, that come in HubSpot. And one thing I didn't note is over here, because we don't have the Commerce Hub on the data model overview yet, but we're in a free portal, and uh, we have access to these objects if we if we uh, if we set up, our payments, right? So it's not even, paywalled, right? So it's available to us at the free level, and certainly everywhere above that. But there's not a clear understanding of how these objects, fit in. And it's really, since they're available at free, these are a native standard object now. And until we can see them in that light, there's going to be a huge education gap. And I think it starts with setting a common language foundation, uh, in a mapping activity. Uh, Prior to this, we have, this guy, which I've shared a couple times, that is very representative of the HubSpot of old, right? Focused on contact, company, deals, and tickets. We've got timeline events, in various places. Start to touch on line item and product. You can have feedback submissions. This was one that was shared with me, made by Ian Shields, who I'm going to be chatting with on Friday. He's agreed to work with me on this. So it goes a little bit deeper, a little more detailed, with calling out form submissions and list memberships. And we've got, you've got quotes in here too. Yep, quotes, line items, right? So continuing to expand to match what's currently available. And when we don't have this kind of stuff, I've said lots of times, this is when complexity gets overwhelming, because you start to see new things and you're not sure how it's all connected. So it's hard not to play with it. But then when you don't understand how they're connected, you might see it in one place and not in the other, and then not know why. So quick overview in this world of everything's an object. And I think I've got most everything here, right? So we're in Canva. And if you want to, if you're a part of the Sprocketeer community, join the community-led HubSpot mapping channel. There's a link to this. I do hope this becomes a community, upkeep exercise. But until then, happy to do the work that needs to be done. So I started splitting up objects in terms of just, admin, which is stuff I really don't know where to put necessarily. We've got some activity objects and some CRM objects. So an admin, we have, lists, marketing campaigns, workflows, and HubSpot user. We have, and I'll probably chat about those a little bit as we move through the diagram we're going to build, but will not be a focus. Then we have activity objects, and we've got calls, meetings, emails, postal mail. This number that you see is the node related to API, management and setup. And you can actually see that for yourself. So the value of having these native and standard is that these don't change from portal to portal. And you can see if we click on tickets here, you can see this node ID up here, and everybody should be able to do this in your portal. So if you're curious and not needing to ping the API to understand these node IDs, this is a tricky way to find it in the URL. So that's what all these numbers are. In the case of custom objects, it's related to their custom object ID. So we have, beyond that, we have SMS, LinkedIn messages, WhatsApp. What's curious is these all have the same node ID. So some assumptions there means like they're all handled the same way with the same properties. But maybe there is a type property that does the separation work. And I'll just confirm that that's still the case. So we have node 18 for LinkedIn, WhatsApp, and SMS. And then as we go a little bit down, this is where, so up here, these objects, as I think about them and how they might apply to the journey, calls, meetings, SMS, LinkedIn, WhatsApp. Calls and meetings, obviously, for live conversations, right? But then SMS, LinkedIn, and WhatsApp are also more conversational, channels. May not be completely synchronous, but often when we use them, we're expecting a synchronous conversation to happen. So the difference between, Slack and email, as an example, if I post a message in a Slack and we've been, communicating, there's an expectation that I might hear back from you right away, versus email and postal mail, maybe as asynchronous. Certainly postal mail as asynchronous as it gets when trying to communicate with somebody. But emails, if we're good at time management and calendar management, we're only checking emails, certain times throughout the day. And it's gotta hit a priority level to address it. So usually asynchronous in nature. So these are like communication channels, right? And while we're labeling all these as activities, coming back here, we've got, tasks and notes, which kind of fall in a different class for me because they don't necessarily require, or expect interaction from somebody else, right? We could leave lots of notes without needing input from anybody else. We could leave notes for ourselves with no expectation of anybody else needing to see it. We could leave notes for our team. And so that's why I've kind of separated them down here. And then not sure where to put marketing events at this time. Maybe it's a CRM object at the end of the day. But we'll see. And then the CRM objects, which is all the ones we mentioned, in our data model overview, including the new orders object, and the new carts object, which both became available API-wise last month. So you can now create these objects via the API without any required integration from something like Shopify. And then we have our commerce objects. So, and I've kind of journey categorized these here. So contact, company, product, and payment links are some things that you can prepare, whether you're in an active conversation or not. More information that, is intended to be a little bit static, but may evolve over time. Slim, it's a good point here. Why not consider marketing events as an analytics container? That is a good point, because I do have this analytics event, which is designed for like form fills and stuff like that. Custom events, as it relates, like as HubSpot refers to it, custom events, so not custom objects, but custom events, something I'm trying to learn more about. That I think is something that can be very powerful for people to start using now that it's available below enterprise. So I think a fourth bucket for analytics certainly makes sense here. So then as we start in the sales process or the buying process, we've got, leads, deals, line items, quotes, and tickets and carts. Hoping to find a good spot for these, in the diagram. We have all these things. Some are mandatory, some are not. If we're to successfully execute, a customer relationship. So finding good ways to be flexible about those is important. And that's going to be key because all of these commerce objects are very flexible. And so then after we win the deal, we've got, could have an order object, could have an invoice. Maybe we're representing payments in the system. Maybe they paid against a recurring monthly product, which will create a subscription. We're also very close to being able to create subscriptions separately. And then in blue, we have some custom objects here, which probably don't get into today. Maybe, but I probably have a hard time not talking about deliverables, at least a little bit. So that's the overview. Again, Slim points out, custom events, are different than marketing events. And once you get into activity, engagement, tracking, there's a few different ways right now you can do this stuff in HubSpot. So I just rewatched an episode 8 recording of mastering custom events in HubSpot. I think they did it in March. And if you're curious about that, I'd definitely check that out. And it really speaks to just making, like, if you understand how the system's put together and you make a place for the data that makes sense and can be maintained and doesn't continuously get overwritten if you don't want it to be. And, there's all these things that no matter which level of HubSpot you're using, free to enterprise, there's some data structure and data strategy to be put in place in order to use the system effectively. So let's get into it. Pop out here. All right. And so, in most cases, we start with an analytics event. So let's say a form submission. It's going to create a contact record, right? And Sometimes, I see here. Oh, there's a line. Let me just make these a little bit more obvious. There we go. And sometimes I think it's out of the box set to on. At the same time, we're creating a company record. And I think at some point, probably not right now, but this is where like getting into which data is required. We see that on ERDs. You should have required data that you need to create the thing. But right now, I'm just going to focus on the big picture records as a customer, as a potential customer engages us. So analytics event into contact record into company, right? And let's say they have not raised their hand necessarily, but they have shown interest. So we might call them a lead. From there, we'll do a little bit of qualification and turn it into a deal. Now, what do we need to do to close this deal? Usually we're adding, and of course, this is when the process is all in HubSpot. It's going to be cases where maybe we're doing this in other systems and then bringing the information in. But we need to add some line items so that we can generate quote. And those line items are referencing a product library. We hope it's not always custom line items. And I guess I need to call this product record. Be consistent. And now that we have our line items, we can create a quote from the deal. And there's definitely lots to be said for multi-directional arrows and crow's feet and all this stuff. So again, we're just starting with top level flow of how records get created and when in the example that I'm used to. Like, a lot of different companies might do this differently. I do think there's a bit of best practice being applied here. But we're about to show how challenging that is as the Commerce Hub, comes into play. So we're creating a quote here. And so record is an instance of, the object that we highlighted up here, right? So up here, we're calling them objects because it's the structure that the data is going to go into, the schema, if you will. The records are all instances of that object. So now we've got a quote record. And what we can do with that, what we hope to happen, is we're getting a payment is something we can do. So as they pay, a payment record gets created. And if it was a recurring line item, a subscription record will be created. Just take this down just a notch. There we go. And related to this, we will see an invoice. Now, I haven't been through all the possible use cases, but I know that this stuff is super flexible. And especially now that you will be able to create subscriptions soon, and kind of the challenge of why we, maybe don't have an ERD to look at yet is that these are very flexible in that sometimes you will see all three, sometimes you will see, one. If we don't, maybe we just get a signature here and we say the quote closes. I get one of these lines here. But it's just a signature. And at that moment, we go to the deal and actually create an invoice. And then that would mean that we're actually going, like this becomes a double arrow, and we can go either way with it. We can also, because we know that functionality is different between what we can do on the quote with line items and what we can do with payment links, maybe we would prefer to turn this deal into a payment link. And I'll just denote that here, which is not to be confused with payment records, right? Payment links are different kinds of records that are meant to get payments easier, right? So I'm just going to make these objects and then I'll do my best to clean up the lines. So we can, once we have a deal record with line items on it, we can flip it into a payment link and send the payment link. We can flip it into an invoice record. So again, now we're here. And if we do, just get rid of this guy. We can go from here. So let's say we send a payment link in an email. now we're going and we're getting payment, hopefully. Just clean this up a little bit. Right? And we get the payment, right? And there was no invoice. Maybe the quote wasn't even signed. We didn't need a signature, right? So it's certainly helping me to talk through this. I hope it's helpful for y'all out there. But trying to denote, once you get into this flexibility that we all want, trying to highlight that is going to be challenging. But I think it's a job we have to, try and do. Well, we have to do it. We have to do it if we want to bring in, other people into the system and not have it be a mess. If we want to create processes with process rules that are clear to follow and effective, right? So now something that's interesting is I'm just going to come back up here and reference, our objects. Right. So you've got contact, company, product, payment links, lead, deal, line item, quote. Ticket, order, and carts are not represented. Right. So if you haven't seen orders and carts, and if you're not on the Shopify integration, you probably haven't seen carts. If you don't have NetSuite or Dynamics or Shopify, you probably haven't seen orders. But what happens, and this is where we start to talk about the difference between managing a deal and letting people buy online when there is no sale to manage, and you just need to intake the data, right? The new Shopify integration goes right to orders, right? So if we think about that, that's a contact, and that could be the first event. That could be this event, right? So if that's the path, then create an order record. Right from here. And let's maybe make this like an alternate route for now. And let's put it over here. Get closer in here. Highlight this guy. See if I can bring the edge of this line over this way. There we go. So we've got this order that came direct from the contact record. What you'll also see is that this is another path to getting a payment record. Now, of course, if there was, do this again, maybe there was a cart involved on the way. Maybe there were several carts involved on the way. For sure, from a marketing perspective, how effective abandoned cart emails can be. So we want to be monitoring that. And we probably make that very similar to a lead, right? Or maybe it's probably could be a lead, could be a deal, depending on how we're approaching it. And then we have tickets, which is where it's where does it belong here? And because it could show up anywhere, literally any part of this process can include a ticket, right? As the relationship, begins and continues, any point they have a question that requires some kind of internal effort that's not really, just a quick 2-second answer, right? We're thinking about tickets in that way. But let's say most traditionally, they're already a customer. And something comes up because we're managing orders for payments instead of managing them for invoices, or instead of managing them for success. So in this world, in the world where there's an order, because one thing I haven't highlighted yet is that eventually, I believe, as the orders continue to get introduced into the system, we'll have another line here that is representative of a deal, moving into an order, right? If we have any hope of reporting on all this stuff effectively, right? And this switch to orders has impacted, Shopify integration users quite a bit, because it used to go to deals and now it goes to orders, and you can't report on revenue effectively in one place right now. And of course, so I'm focused on the individual, the contact here. A lot of this stuff gets associated, with the company. I think in general, you're going to find a way to connect contacts to it. So I'd like to think of it as association through the contact record. What else? Yeah, I think this is a good, almost a good stopping point. I'd be remiss if we're not, if I don't mention, where does it even go here? Right? It goes next to orders. We got deliverables. Deliverable record, which in our case represents a sold line item. One thing I did language-wise and common language-wise from watching the webinar about mastering custom events is that, events in that nature are monitoring, one-time events that are not meant to have the data changed, right? And that's how we've been talking about line items, because at the time of sale, right? And up to that point, you have created all these instantaneous versions of either the product record from your library, from your planned suite of products that you offer, or a custom, line item completely. But at the time of sale, like when it's closed won, that information needs to freeze. Because it needs to freeze, it's not meant or built to be managed post sale. That's why when we run into shipping address changes and, all these things that might change in terms of how the product is delivered, right? Even, specification changes that might require special scoping activities. All this stuff happens after. When you try to edit that on the line items that are related to the deal that was closed, it becomes a huge mess and your reporting will suck. So we need to think about line items as that instant version of what we sold, what we agreed to sell, what the contract was based on. And then we have this deliverable record, which could be a contract, could be an asset, could be a piece of equipment, could be a project, right? Whatever we have to deliver in order to make good on our promise of why they paid us money, right? Could be warranties, there's just so many things that happen after that haven't really had a home, in CRMs or in ERPs. We got to find a way to manage that stuff better, because that's the stuff that the customer cares about. That's the stuff that your team is having to answer questions about every day, spending way too much time on it. Customers care about what's in the order, not necessarily the order itself. So while line items are being made to, connect with orders and carts as well. I can show that here. I don't want to forget about that. That doesn't mean they're all of a sudden going to have all these properties and fields, like and pipelines, and it just doesn't make sense to do the post-sale management in the line item itself. And I'll be very surprised if anybody can convince me otherwise, but I invite you to try to have an open mind where I can, and maybe there's something I'm missing there that none of the ERP or CRM manufacturers have figured out either. So fun stuff. Glad to get this started. But this is the kind of stuff, this is the new HubSpot. When we talk about the new HubSpot, graduating from contacts, companies, deals, record, deals, tickets only. This is it, right? These are the objects that are required to fulfill a great customer experience. And as we treat the entire, set of data containers in HubSpot as objects, we can start to easily, not necessarily quickly, but much more easily determine, okay, where do we expect, this marketing campaign, which is designed to get orders, where do we expect them to come into the process? If it's designed to get orders and we've got a bunch of leads being created, right, then something's not working right, because this was likely, we spent a lot of time on it and invested in it because the whole point was to remove the sales process for a transactional item that doesn't necessarily need hand holding the whole way, yet we're continuing to take them through a sales process. In sense, losing all the money, all the profitability of this, whole campaign. Which lists do we need to support, bringing them into the process in various places? I just really invite, everyone to, like, the sooner you can start thinking about HubSpot in this way, and it's not for everybody, I get it, but just understand that the better you understand the whole platform and how the data flows and how it can flow, the much better off you're going to be in terms of leveraging the platform, for the money that you're paying for it. Because let's be honest, the cost is gonna go up over time. June 24th is the next increase. For new users, it's a little bit offset by the seats, the seats pricing model change. But as they continue to build a world-class customer platform that can be and is the most valuable platform a business can have in terms of customer experience management and customer communication management, they can't give you less than. You don't want a watered down version. So get your money's worth. This should be and could be the most valuable piece of your technology stack for your business. Use it that way, develop it that way, manage it that way. It starts with the data structure and understanding how it helps. So we'll do, I want to do a part 2 tomorrow with the custom objects. Maybe we get into some of the data needs. But until then, I invite you, and I'll share a link to the community, Sprocketeer. Come on in. This is linked in the community-led HubSpot mapping channel. I love feedback. What am I missing? What needs to be thought of differently? What's not making sense? Let's find the opportunity together, and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.